Hello and welcome to this continuing first look exploring section looking at Bussy D'Ambois by George Chapman. The jury's still out on how you're supposed to say that. I quite like going a bit French with it, but there are textual clues that it's sort of got to be a bit more like that. But we will not necessarily go there. We're going on from Act 3 onwards in this tale of court intrigue and currently debauchery. Bussy is currently getting on with somebody else's wife in between Act 2 and Act 3. So an interesting question is how long the interval should be to give the impression of his level of performance. Anyway, sorry, I'm being terribly crass today. I will pull back from that. Oh dear, it's getting worse. Okay, reading today, the Guise is...
Hello, my name is Lynn. I am coming to you from the northwestern United States, where it's very early in the morning.
Reading Henry and Montsurry is...
Sarah Blake in Germany, and I'm shocked, I tell you.
It's a boys' company play. What do you expect? Reading Monsieur is...
Alan in Suffolk.
Reading Friar, Duchess, Maffe, and Annabel is...
Brian Myers from Portland, Oregon.
And reading Tamyra and Charlotte is...
Alίκη, Chapple, currently in Lancaster, Lancashire, England.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. Normally I'd just be reading stage directions, but we're a bit short today, so at the moment I'm vaguely reading Bussy and Bussy and Pierrot, but I will attempt to pass some of those on as we go. But at the moment I'm sticking with it as it is. So Act 3, Scene 1. After a mini interval break, possibly, depending on where this was performed, enter D'Ambois and Tamyra with a chain of pearl, apparently. Oh, it's me. Sorry, I'm looking. Also, just a general note: there is an A and a B text, and the one of the texts doesn't have this opening bit from Bussy. I was looking at my paper copy, going, "Oh right, Sweet mistress, cease. Your conscience is too nice and bites too hotly of the Puritan spice."
Oh, my dear servant, in thy close embraces I have set open all the doors of danger to my encompassed honour and my life. Before I was secure against death and hell, but now am subject to the heartless fear of every shadow and of every breath, and would change firmness with an aspen leaf, so confident a spotless conscience is, so weak a guilty. Oh, the dangerous siege sin lays about us, and the tyranny he exercises when he hath expunged, like to the horror of a winter's thunder mixed with a gushing storm, that suffer nothing to stir abroad on earth but their own rages, is sin. When it hath gathered head above us, no roof, no shelter can secure us so, but he will drown our cheeks in fear or woe.
Sin is a coward, madam, and insults but on our weakness, and in his truest valour. And so our ignorance tames us, that we let his shadows fright us, and like empty clouds, in which our faulty apprehensions forge the forms of dragons, lions, elephants, when they hold no proportion, the sly charms of the which policy makes him like a monster, kept only to show men for servile money. That false hag often paints him in her cloth 10 times more monstrous than he is in truth. In 3 of us the secret of our meeting is only guarded, and 3 friends as one have been esteemed as our 3 powers, that in our one soul are as one united. Why should we fear, then? For myself I swear, sooner shall torture be the sire to pleasure, and health be grievous to one long time sick, than the dear jewel of your fame in me be made an outcast to your infamy. Nor shall my values, sacred to your virtues, only give free course to it from myself, but make it fly out of the mouths of kings in golden vapours, and with awful wings.
It rests as all kings' seals were set in thee. Now let us call my father, whom I swear I could extremely chide, but that I fear to make him so suspicious of my love, of which, sweet servant, do not let him know for all the world.
Alas, he will not think it.
Come then. Ho, father! Open, take your friend.
The friar ascends.
Now, honoured daughter, is your doubt resolved?
Aye, father, but you went away too soon.
Too soon?
Indeed you did. You should have stayed, had not your worthy friend been of your bringing, and that contains all laws to temper me. Not all the fearful danger that besieged us had awed my throat from exclamation.
I know your serious disposition well. Come, son, the morn comes on.
Now, honoured mistress, till farther service call, all bliss supply you.
And you this chain of pearl, and my love only.
And the friar and D'Ambois descend back down into the hole.
It is not I, but urgent destiny that, as great statesmen for their general end in politic justice make poor men offend, enforceth my offence to make it just. What shall weak dames do, when the whole work of nature hath a strong finger in each one of us? Needs must that sweep away the silly cobweb of our still undone labours, that lays still our powers to it, as to the line, the stone, not to the stone, the line should be opposed. We cannot keep our constant course in virtue. What is alike at all parts every day differs from the other, every hour and minute. Aye, every thought in our false clock of life oft times inverts the whole circumference. We must be sometimes one, sometimes another. Our bodies are but thick clouds to our souls, through which they cannot shine when they desire, when all the stars, and even the sun himself, must stay the vapours times that he exhales before he can make good his beams to us. Oh, how can we, that are but motes to him, wandering at random in his ordered rays, disperse our passion's fumes with our weak labours that are more thick and black than all earth's vapours?
Enter Montsurry.
Good day, my love. What? Up and ready too?
Both, my dear lord. Not all this night made I myself unready, or could sleep a wink.
Alas, what troubled my true love? My peace, from being at peace within her better self? Or how could sleep forbear to seize thine eyes, when he might challenge them as his just prize?
I am in no power earthly, but in yours. To what end should I go to bed, my lord, that wholly missed the comfort of my bed? Or how should sleep possess my faculties, wanting the proper closer of mine eyes?
Then will I never more sleep night from thee. All mine own business, all the king's affairs, shall take the day to serve them. Every night I'll ever dedicate to thy delight.
Nay, good my lord, esteem not my desires, such doters on their humours, that my judgment cannot subdue them to your worthier pleasure. A wive's pleased husband must her object be in all her acts, not her soothed fantasy.
Then come, my love. Now pay those rites to sleep. Thy fair eyes owe him. Shall we now to bed?
Oh, no, my lord. Your holy friar says all couplings in the day that touch the bed adulterous are, even in the married, whose grave and worthy doctrine, well I know, your faith in him will liberally allow.
He's a most learned and religious man. Come to the presence, then, and see great D'Ambois, fortune's proud mushroom shot up in a night, stand like an Atlas under our king's arm, which greatness with him Monsieur now envies as bitterly and deadly as the Guise.
But he that was but yesterday his maker, his raiser and preserver?
Even the same. Each natural agent works but to this end, to render that it works on like itself. which, since the Monsieur in his act on D'Ambois cannot to his ambitious end effect, but that, quite opposite, the king hath power, in his love born to D'Ambois, to convert the point of Monsieur's aim on his own breast, he turns his outward love to inward hate. A prince's love is like the lightning's fume, which no man can embrace, but must consume.
And they exit. There's lots of interesting elements to this, and also to the previous scene. I was mentioning that there are differences between the A and the B text, and in this, the B text seems to mostly comprise of going down into the hole. So I wonder if and also comprises most of the references to the necklace. So I'm actually curious about this plot point about the necklace as to how involved it was in the original play and then in later revision and adjustment, or whether it was always there and got. I don't know the textual history here, but it's interesting that we've got slightly different bits of business potentially at play here to play around with this particular scene and the previous one. Lynn. Oh, you're muted at present.
Okay, so yesterday, my feeling about this text was that it was a little mannered and stuffy and bloodless, and today it's like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's supposed to be hilarious because, okay, at the end of our session yesterday, Tamyra was saying, oh, I just can't live without him. I have to have him. She gets her confessor to go fetch him. He makes a pander of a friar. And as soon as they do it, she's like, oh, I'm damned forever. Everything, like, my life is ruined, Okay. And he's like, yes, there's no such thing as sin, basically. I'm not really sure what that argument is, but he's like, nah, it's fine. And then, like, as soon as he goes out, her husband shows back up. Oh, hi, dear. I couldn't sleep without you. Well, let's go to bed right now. Oh, no. The friar says that even married people shouldn't do it during the day. Yeah, that's right. And then we find out that, speaking of overplaying your hand, Bussy has been such an arrogant jerk that his former patron is now mad at him. It's just, maybe these people are not supposed to be like cardboard cutouts. Maybe they're just supposed to be hilarious and silly. Like, maybe it's starting to feel like parody to me today.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, I think there is room for humor in here. I mean, you've got all these intrigues and they're moving in different directions, and there are reversals. Bussy's been brought up by Monsieur, and then he's not quite doing what Monsieur wants. And it's not quite going. Nothing's quite going to plan. And we were discussing last time about how Monsieur, it doesn't appear to be as noble as perhaps everyone seemed terribly noble and was talking about virtue and at the beginning of the play, and it seems that that's a bit of a red herring to a degree, and what we're talking about here is what Monsieur hopes Bussy is like, perhaps. For his political ends. That doesn't mean that's actually what he's like, or that he's going to do, or that everything goes to plan. And so there's a lot at play here that is potentially interesting. And any bedroom scene like this can ultimately turn into a farce. I think that's reasonable. I think there are laughs here. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I wasn't wholly convinced by Bussy's argument as I was saying it. I've been going over it, but it'll be fine. Nobody knows. It's just us three. Nobody else knows. They don't know, of course. Somebody else knows. And yeah, it could all go horribly wrong. Brian.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in this Montsurry's revelation that there's been a reversal in court, and since the last time we saw him, D'Ambois is now a favorite of the king, and his own benefactor is now afraid of him and hates him. feels like that was a big change. And in another play, it might have been something we were shown rather than told. And it feels like there's a lot of telling about Bussy and his virtue and how he's received that makes people react to him in ways that I sometimes don't see. You just have to take their word for it.
There may be an element of we talked about this last week a bit about setting up the next scene with a short bit of dialogue, so that you can then see it happening. And so there's that might be sort of what's going on here. That the first scene of a new act slightly sets the hairs that are supposed to be running for the rest of this particular unit of action, and so that might be what's going on there. Because you're right, it does come out of the blue, but it's not so much that this is a major plot point that you're not going to see enacted. I'm telling you, this is the next bit of action that's about to happen. That may or may not be what it's doing, because we haven't read the next scene yet, but I'm just literally looking at the first line of King Henry in the moment. It seems to be that's where the scene's going, so that might be what's going on there. But yeah, I don't disagree that this is doing a slightly different job of work to a lot of the Playhouse plays that we've looked at. This, and I'm really interested in what Boys Company's range of playing can be, because of course remember this is played by boys, so actually just going to Lynn's point about parody, maybe there is an element here of something that is doing something slightly different as an effect, and the effect it's going to have is maybe down to who the players are. We know one actor was very famous for his Bussy, as it were, because we know it from the prologue. And then also a transition. Yeah, in the prologue they're mentioning Field, who was a boy actor, and grows up and joins an adult company later on, and that's presumably he's retired or he's too old to play the role by the time that later revival happens. I forget.
Or he's dead because people die.
I think he's dead. Off the top of my head, he's by this point, because this will be about 1630 odd, I think the revival is. But anyway, that's all sort of a piece of information that isn't necessarily very important to us in this context. Any other thoughts about that scene? Because they're all dead now. Any other thoughts? Okay, Act 3, Scene 2 then. Hopefully nobody's talking at the same time as themselves, because lots of people enter. The King, Henry, D'Ambois, Monsieur, Guise, Duchess, Annabel, Charlotte, and there's some attendants as well.
Speak home, my Bussy. Thy impartial words are like brave falcons that dare truss a fowl much greater than themselves. Flutterers are kites that check at sparrows. Thou shalt be my eagle, and bear my thunder underneath thy wings. Truth's words like jewels hang in the ears of kings.
Would I might live to see no Jews hang there instead of jewels. Instead of jewels, sycophants, I mean, who use truth like the devil, his true foe, cast by the angel to the pit of fears and bound in chains. Truth seldom decks kings' ears. Slave flattery, like Euryppia's legs, rolled up in boots of ropes, with kings' soothed guts, swaddled and trampled, now lives only free. Oh, 'tis a subtle knave, how like the plague, unfelt he strikes into the brain of man, and rageth in his entrails when he can, worse than the poison of a red-haired man.
Fly at him and his brood. I cast thee off, and once more give thee surname of mine eagle.
I'll make you sport enough then. Let me have my lucernes too, or dogs inured to hunt, beasts of most rapine, but to put them up. And if I trust not, let me not be trusted. Show me a great man by the people's voice, which is the voice of God, that by his greatness bombasts his private roofs with public riches, that affects royalty rising from a clapdish, that rules so much more than his suffering king, than he makes kings of his subordinate slaves himself, and them graduate like woodmongers, piling a stack of billets from the earth, raising each other into the steeple's heights. Let him convey this on the turning props of Protean law, and his own counsel keeping, keep all upright. Let me but hawk at him. I'll play the vulture, and so thump his liver that like a huge unlading argosy he shall confess all, and then you may hang him. Show me a clergyman that is in a voice, a lark of heaven, a heart, a mole of earth, that hath good living and a wicked life, a temperate look and a luxurious gut, turning the rents of his superfluous cures into your pheasants and your partridges, venting their quintessence as men read Hebrew. But let me but hawk at him, and like the other, he shall confess all, and you then may hang him. Show me a lawyer that turns sacred law the equal renderer of each man his own, the scourge of rapine and exhortation, the sanctuary and impregnable defence of retired learning and besieged virtue, into a harpy that eats all but's own, into the damned sins it punisheth, into the synagogue of thieves and atheists, blood into gold and justice into lust. Let me but hawk at him. As to the rest, he shall confess all, and you then may hang him. So I'm just going to pause there. Gordon Bennett, there's a lot to unpack there. Random anti-Semitism, largely there for a pun, a really awful pun. Jews instead of jewels. But actually the anti-Semitism sort of is loaded throughout the whole of that speech. It keeps coming back.
Doesn't it?
It's endless. And of course it's all about Henry saying, "Hey, you're my man now," and he's going, "Yeah, well, tell me, I'll go out and I'll be your eagle. I'll catch people." Aliki, then Lynn.
I wonder if that's Bussy's game in the end. Just declaring how virtuous he is and how everybody else is corrupt and what he's going to do to all of the corrupts. And then people believe him for some reason.
Well, is it him just going, I'm a no-nonsense person who's just going to cut through all the chaff and the nonsense here, and I'll be your hatchet man, because I'm good at that. Is that sort of what you're saying? Lynn, then Sarah.
Yeah, he doesn't actually make it clear, or I didn't follow what he means precisely, but by let me but hawk at him. Basically, let me coerce a confession out of him.
Let me hunt him.
Hawk
let me hunt him down. Yeah.
Yeah, he shall confess all. I'll make him confess somehow. And this whole thing is long speech, sort of musical, because it has this refrain in it. So his big aria. And this is a man who has just basically gotten out of bed with another man's wife and
killed 5 people.
And killed 5 people. And he's saying, "Yes, I'm the hawk of justice." Like, what?
Sarah, and then Brian.
Yeah, it's really interesting because certainly in yesterday's session, he was painting himself as this sort of no-nonsense man of action. And that is kind of what he's saying here. But my God, he goes on at length. If this speech was at the beginning and like Lynn said, he doesn't really say a lot. If this speech had come at the beginning of the play, we would be immediately like, "Oh, who is this dude? He's a funny fella. He's clearly all mouth and no trousers, like a bit of a buffoon, sort of, going on and on at length and not really saying much and being like, with like really like painfully expansive with his metaphors and like just not refusing to let go of them and going on and on with them for lines and lines and lines." It's like, oh, dude, okay, we get the picture. He would be kind of absurd. So I'm wondering, I mean, I didn't particularly enjoy him yesterday. I'm still not enjoying him, but in a different way. So I'm thinking like, maybe, are we meant to be reading this as a sign that, this is how the court corrupts people, that it takes these no nonsense direct men of action and it turns them into these sorts of prattling flatterers.
Well,
I don't know.
Because I think he's always been a social climber. I think that's pretty much what he stated at the very beginning. Is he wants to get ahead, and Monsieur helps him get to court, and he gets in bed with Montsurry's wife, and now he's here with the king. And the thing is, this isn't a long speech. I should just point out it's 35 lines long. That's not long. It's a set piece, and think about it, this is a physical speech before a king in a royal presence. This isn't a static, I'm standing here doing a speech. He's doing stuff, and I'm thinking about, again, the reference in the prologue to a specific actor making this part his own. And I sort of think that's what this speech is inviting you to do, is that you were inviting, this is performed, that this is bold playing going on here. This is a character who at the beginning of the play threw himself down onto the floor of the stage at the end of his opening 30 lines or whatever. It's actually quite condensed, considering. It is full of rhetorical devices that are returning to the same thing. But, I wouldn't say he's going full, I'm pretending to be a hawk, I am an eagle. Aha! But I think there's an element there. That's sort of what he's doing. He's going around the court. The room is full of people who hate him. And this is the thing. The Guise is in the room. He hates him. He now hates him for a different reason. He hated him earlier, because he's not only does he hate him, he's hating someone who's now in with the king. It's even worse. So, what's happening on stage? It's not just a guy making a long speech. It's actually doing something with the rest of the room that I find really interesting. Brian, then back to Lynn. Oh, you're muted at present.
Trouble with that. 2 points. A small one first. In the king sets him up to be an eagle, in contrast to the vultures who surround the king, and it's a hawking metaphor, clearly. And halfway through, and Bussy picks up that language, and halfway through, he says, he's saying, "But let me hawk at him." He's echoing the metaphor, and then he says, "I'll play the vulture." And he goes into his Prometheus metaphor. And then by the end of the speech, he's back to "let me hawk at him" again. So he casts himself in the middle as the opposite of himself, at least in terms of the king's original metaphor, which is playing with both sides. I don't know how deliberately. If it's just mere, I think you just receive it as rhetorical virtuosity. But it is an interesting slip, since we are at the same time in the next speech criticizing him for being too much of a rhetorician, too much of a performer. And that speech, Sarah, you're exactly right. You said if he had given it at the beginning, he almost did give it at the beginning. His very first talk, about his opening speech, is about virtue and about how corrupt the court is. And that's what this speech is. So it's the same theme, and more performatively designed, because this time he has an audience, and it's rhetorically structured with a triplet that's easier to perceive. And it makes me think, as you said, Sarah, that we would have thought of him as amusing in some sense, when the Monsieur's servant, I think it's Maffe, takes him the 1,000 crowns and tries to give him only 100. The servant says, "Oh, I get this guy. He's a fool. He's going to be the king's fool." And that's the part he's playing here. Not deliberately and explicitly exactly, but he is a rhetorical performer, getting the king's attention and pleasing the king by saying clever things. So it begins to feel like maybe there's some duality in this role that Chapman is perfectly aware of and playing with. For the first time, I've had the feeling that maybe he's in control of this and not just giving us some awful guy to build a big aura around.
Lynn, and then we'll need to move on.
I like Rob's idea that this monologue should be really quite physical, and he's maybe like quite kinetic and moving around the room, because it's also true that with longer speeches, it's one of the important things about staging them is how everyone reacts. That's really what the audience listens to. Once, particularly here, where it's really just it's sort of an exercise in aesthetics, and you keep coming back to the refrain of "he'll confess all," and like once the audience hears, it's like, oh, this is basically a song. they can tune out to that and read the room, and you can have the king being just enthralled, perhaps, and Guise and who else is there? Maybe Montsurry and Monsieur just seething and just getting more and more irritated as the speech goes on. So you can do that work to as well to sort of build those reactions.
Okay, well, I pause there. We barely started the scene. The speech is over. We have the additional bodies coming on of Montsurry, Tamyra, and Pedro.
Where will you find such game as you would hawk at?
I'll hawk about your house for one of them.
Come, you're a glorious ruffian and run proud of the king's headlong graces. Hold your breath, or by that poisoned vapor, not the king shall back your murderous valor against me.
I would the king would make his presence free, but for one bout betwixt us, by the reverence due to the sacred space twixt king and subjects, here would I make thee cast that popular purple in which thy proud soul sits and braves thy sovereign.
Oh, peace, peace, I pray thee, peace.
Let him peace first that made the first war.
He's the better man.
And therefore may do the worst.
He has more titles.
So Hydra had more heads.
He's greater known.
His greatness is the people's, mine's mine own.
He's noblier born.
He is not. I am noble, and noblesse in his blood hath no gradation, but in his merit.
Thou art not nobly born, but a bastard to the Cardinal of Amboise.
Thou liest, proud gizzard. Let me fly, my lord.
Not in my face, my eagle. Violence flies the sanctuary of a prince's eyes.
Still shall we chide and foam upon this bit. Is the Guise only great in faction? Stands he not by himself? Proves he the opinion that men's souls are without them? Be a duke, and lead me to the field.
Come, follow me.
Stay them. Stay, D'Ambois. Cousin Guise, I wonder your honoured disposition brooks so ill a man so good, that only would uphold man in his native noblesse, from whose fall all our dissensions rise, that in himself, without the outward patches of our frailty, riches and honour, knows he comprehends worth with the greatest. Kings had never borne such boundless empire over other men, had all maintained the spirit and state of D'Ambois, nor had the full impartial hand of nature, that all things gave in her original, without these definite terms of mine and thine, been turned unjustly to the hand of fortune, had all preserved her in her prime like D'Ambois. No envy, no disjunction had dissolved, or plucked one stick out of the golden faggot in which the world of Saturn bound our lives, had all been held together with the nerves, the genius, and the ingenious soul of D'Ambois. Let my hand therefore be the Hermian rod to part and reconcile, and so conserve you as my combined embracers and supporters.
'Tis our king's motion, and we shall not seem to worst eyes womanish, though we change thus soon, never so great grudge for his greater pleasure.
I seal to that, and so the manly freedom that you so much profess hereafter prove not a bold and glorious license to deprave. To me his hand shall hold the Hermian virtue, his grace effects, in which submissive sign on this sacred right, on his sacred right hand I lay mine.
'Tis well, my lord, and so your worthy greatness decline not to the greater insolence, nor make you think it a prerogative to rack men's freedoms with the ruder wrongs. My hand, stuck full of laurel, in true sign 'tis wholly dedicate to righteous peace, in all submission kisseth the other side.
Thanks to ye both. And kindly, I invite ye both to a banquet, where we'll sacrifice full cups to confirmation of your loves. At which, fair ladies, I entreat your presence, and hope you, madam, will take one carouse for reconcilement of your lord and servant.
Duchess is muted at present. Still muted at present.
If I should fail, my lord, some other lady would be found there to do that for my servant.
Any of these here?
Nay, I know not that.
Think your thoughts like my mistress, honoured lady. Muted Tamyra.
I think not on you, sir. You are one I know not.
Cry you mercy, madam.
Oh, sir, has she met you?
At which point exit Henry, D'Ambois, and ladies chatting as they go.
What had my bounty drunk when it raised him?
You have stuck us up a worthy. Start over. You have stuck us up a very worthy flag that takes more wind than we have in our sails.
Oh, so he spreads and flourishes.
He must down. Upstarts should never perch too near a crown.
'Tis true, my lord, and as this doting hand, even out of earth, like Juno, struck this giant, so Jove's great ordinance shall be here implied, to strike him under the Aetna of his pride. To which work lend your hands and let us cast, where me may set snares for his raging greatness. I think it best amongst our greatest women, for there is no such trap to catch an upstart as a loose downfall, for, you know, their falls are the ends of all men's rising. If great men and wise make scapes to please advantage, 'tis with a woman. Women, at worst, may still hold men's candles. They direct and know all things amiss in all men, and their women all things amiss in them, through whose charmed mouths we may see all the close scapes of the court, when the most royal of the chase, beast of chase, the hart, being old and cunning in his lairs and haunts, can never be discovered to the bow, the piece, or hand, yet where, beyond some quelch, he breaks his gall and rutteth his hind, place is marked, and by his venery he is taken. Shall we then attempt the cheapest mean to that discovery here, and court our greatest ladies, chiefest women, with shows of love and liberal promises? 'Tis but our breath. If something given in hand sharpen their hopes of more, 'twill be well ventured.
No doubt of that. This is the cunningest point of our devised investigation.
I have broken the ice to it already with the women of your chaste lady, and I've broken the ice to it already with the woman of your chaste lady, and conceive good hope I shall wade through to some wished shore at our next meeting.
Nay, there's small hope there.
Take say of her, my lord, she comes most fitly.
Starting back.
And we'll pause there briefly because this is an ongoing intersecting series of scenes, and I think we should just take in, of course, the importance of Bussy and the Guise have basically just come and have a go if you think you're hard enough in front of the king, and the king said, no, be friends, and of course they go, of course we'll be friends, because in plays when people are forced to be friends, it always goes well. Nobody gets killed. So we have one of those scenes of which there's a nice sort of back and forth between them, and we get that little nod again with the ladies, of course. Have you met him before? No. Definitely haven't just shagged him. And he's sort of still flirting with the Guise's wife, and it's just, oh, come on, no. So yeah, interesting things, and then the Monsieur and the Guise having this little back and forth here of going, well, that didn't work for you, did it, Monsieur? You don't know what create, and then we get all this class stuff of these new upstarts coming into court. And I'd just like to point out that Bussy is related to the Abbot of Amboise, as played by William Hartnell in the Doctor Who story The Massacre. So this is now officially part of the Doctor Who extended universe. Okay, Lynn.
Do we think Bussy is indeed the illegitimate son of the cardinal?
No idea.
He flat out denies it.
There's an interesting question about how true any elements of this guy's actual backstory is as well. So I don't know. But yeah, he wrecks badly, so it's probably true.
Yeah, because for all that plays in this period keep saying you can't judge a book by its cover, basically illegitimate sons are usually dicey at best. So yeah, bastardy is often a marker for someone of poor moral character.
Any other thoughts? I can't see everyone. I was just changing my screen slightly. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we go on to the next unit of action?
Yeah,
yes,
one.
Brian.
I was kind of amused by the king's description of Bussy as man in his native noblesse. I just don't see this as our golden state. I don't see an early civilization of Bussy's getting along with each other or living in an Edenic world. I see the worst of American Republican, man in his freedom, his noble freedom.
Yeah.
Anyway, just had to pass that on.
Yeah. Again, there is this thing. You have to take what everybody is saying with a pinch of salt because they all have an agenda and they're all pushing different ideas, none of which have to be true. I think sometimes we're used to people coming on stage making these statements about nobility and things, etc., and that they have to, on some level, be right. They don't have to be right; they could just be talking bollocks. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable way of reading what's going on here. I haven't found a moral yet. I say I think the clue is it's set in France. And more importantly, it's set in France in the 1570s as well. This is not a time when good stuff is happening. So we shall see about that. We're going to go on in just a moment. I'm going to ask Brian. I think it's no, you can't. I'm looking for someone who can read Perrault. And no, I can't make it work. Okay, so I think probably I could, but pass it on to somebody else. I think possibly Brian could get away with it. You might talk to yourself occasionally, but I don't.
We're enjoying hearing you read.
Hmm?
We're enjoying hearing you read.
Oh, okay, it makes it harder for me.
Agreed.
Makes it harder for me to make textual changes as we're going along.
Oh,
anyway, no, it's okay. We'll keep going. Okay, so Guise, Monsieur, Montsurry having a little chat about how it's all going. Enter Charlotte, Annabel, and Perrault.
You are engaged, indeed.
Nay, pray, my lord, forbear.
What, skittish servant?
No, my lord, I am not so fit for your service.
Nay, pardon me now. My lord, my lady expects me.
I'll satisfy her expectations as far as an uncle may.
Well said. A spirit of courtship of all hands. Now, mine own Perrault, hast thou remembered me for the discovery I entreated thee to make of thy mistress? Speak boldly. Be sure of all things I have sworn to thee.
Building on that assurance, my lord, I may speak, and much the rather because my lady hath not trusted me with that I can tell you, for now I cannot be said to betray her.
Ah, that's all one. So we reach our objects. Forth, I beseech thee.
To tell you truth, my lord, I have made a strange discovery.
Excellent, Perrault. Thou revivest me. I sink quick to perdition if my tongue discover it.
'Tis thus, then. This last night my lord lay forth, and I, watching my ladies sitting up, stole up at midnight from my pallet, and having before made a hole, both through the wall and arras to her inmost chamber, I saw D'Ambois and herself reading a letter. Even he, my lord.
Thou not dream, wench?
I swear he is the man.
The devil he is, and thy lady is damned. Why, this was the happiest shot that ever flew. Just blaze of hypocrisy levelled it. Oh, the infinite regions betwixt a woman's tongue and her heart. This, our goddess of chastity, thought I could not be so slighted if she had not her fraught besides, and therefore plotted this with her woman. Am I dreaming of D'Ambois? Dear Perrault, I will advance thee forever, but tell me now. It's precious, it transforms me with admiration. Sweet Perrault, whom should she trust with this conveyance? Or, all the doors being made sure, how should his conveyance be made?
Nay, my lord, that amazes me. I cannot by any study so much as guess at it.
Well, let's favour our apprehensions with forbearing that a little. For if my heart were not hooped with adamant, the conceit of this would have burst it. Hark thee.
And whispers in her ear.
I pray thee, resolve me. The Duke will never imagine that I am busy about his wife. Hath D'Ambois any privy access to her?
No, my lord. D'Ambois neglects her, as she takes it, and is therefore suspicious that either your lady or the Lady Beaupré hath closely entertained him.
Bar lady, a likely suspicion, and very near the life, especially of my wife.
We'll disguise all with seeming only to have courted. Away, dry palm. She's a liver as dry as a biscuit. A man may go a whole voyage with her and get nothing but tempests from her windpipe.
Here's one I think hath swallowed a porcupine. She casts pricks from her tongue so.
And here's a peacock seems to have devoured one of the Alps. She has so swelling a spirit, and is so cold of her kindness.
We are no windfalls, my lord. You must gather us with the ladder of matrimony, or we'll hang till we be rotten.
Indeed, that's the way to make you ride open arses. But alas, you have no portions fit for such husbands as we wish you.
Portions, my lord? Yes, and such portions as your principality cannot purchase.
What, woman, are those portions?
Riddle, my lord.
Ay, marry, wench. I think thy portion is a right riddle. A man shall ne'er find it out. But let's hear it.
You shall, my lord. What's that, being most rare's most cheap, that when you sow, you never reap, that when it grows most you thin it, and still you lose it when you win it, that when 'tis commonest, 'tis dearest, and when 'tis farthest off, 'tis nearest.
Is this your great portion?
Even this, my lord.
Believe me, I cannot riddle it.
No, my lord, 'tis my chastity, which you shall neither riddle nor fiddle.
Your chastity? Let me begin with the end of it. How is a woman's chastity nearest man when 'tis furthest off?
Why, my lord, when you cannot get it, it goes to the heart on you, and that, I think, comes most near you, and I am sure it shall be far enough off, and so we leave you to our mercies. Exeunt women.
Farewell, riddle.
Farewell, meddler.
Farewell, winter plum.
Now, my lords, what fruit of our inquisition? You nothing budding yet? Speak, good my lord Montsurry.
Nothing but this. D'Ambois is thought negligent in observing the Duchess, and therefore she is suspicious that your niece or my wife closely entertains him.
Your wife, my lord? Think you that possible?
Alas, I know she flies him like her last hour.
Her last hour? Why, that comes upon her the more she flies it. D'Ambois so, think you?
That's not worth the answering. 'Tis miraculous to think with what monsters women's imaginations engross them when they are once enamoured, and what wonders they will work for their satisfaction. They will make a sheep valiant, a lion fearful.
And an ass confident. Well, my lord, more will come forth shortly. Get you to the banquet.
Come, my lord. I have the blind side of one of them.
Exit Guise with Montsurry. Monsieur remains alone.
Oh, the unsounded sea of women's bloods, that when 'tis calmest 'tis most dangerous. Not any wrinkle creaming in their faces, when in their hearts are Scylla and Charybdis, which are still hid in dark and standing fogs. When never day shines, nothing ever grows but weeds and poisons that no statesman knows. nor Cerberus ever saw the damned of nooks, hid with the veils of women's virtuous looks. But what a cloud of sulphur have I drawn up to my bosom in this dangerous secret, which, if my haste with any spark should light, ere D'Ambois were engaged in some sure plot, I would blown up. He would be sure my death. I'd never known it. But before I shall persuade the importance to Montsurry, and make him with some studied stratagem train D'Ambois to his wreak. His maid may tell it, or I, out of my fiery thirst to play with the fell tiger up in the darkness tide, will give it some light, make it quite break loose. I fear it, for heaven, and will not see D'Ambois again till I have told Montsurry set a snare with him to free my fears. Who's there?
Enter Maffe.
My lord.
Go, call the Count Montsurry, and make the doors fast. I will speak with none till he come to me.
Well, my lord.
Maffe makes to leave.
Or else I'll send you some other and see... Or else send you some other and see all the doors made safe yourself. I pray, haste, fly about it.
You'll speak with none but with the Count Montsurry.
With none but he, except it be the Guise.
See, even by this there's one exception more. Your grace must be more firm in the command, or else I shall as weakly execute. The Guise shall speak with you?
Who shall, I say?
And Count Montsurry?
I and Count Montsurry.
Your grace must pardon me that I am bold to urge the clear and full sense of your pleasure, which whensoever I have known, I hope your grace will say I hit it to a hair.
You have.
I hope so, or I would be glad.
I pray, get thee gone, thou art so tedious, the strict form of all thy services, that I had better have one negligent. You hit my pleasure well when D'Ambois hit you. Did you not, think you?
D'Ambois? Why, my lord.
I pray thee talk no more, but shut the doors. Do what I charge thee.
I will, my lord, and yet I would be glad the wrong I had of D'Ambois.
Precious! Then 'tis a fate that plagues me in this man's foolery. May be murdered while he stands on protection of his folly. Avaunt! About thy trick charge.
I go, my lord. I had my head broke in his faithful service. I had no suit the more, nor any thanks, and yet my teeth must still be hit with D'Ambois. D'Ambois, my lord, shall know.
Oh, the devil and D'Ambois!
And exit Maffe.
Tortured with this trusty fool. Never was any curious in his place to do things justly, but he was an ass. We cannot find one trusty that is witty, and therefore bear their disproportion. Thou great star and angel of my life, a sure lease of it, but for some few days, that I may clear my bosom with snake I cherished there. I will then defy all check to it but nature's, and her altars shall crack with vessels crowned with every liquor, drawn from her highest and most bloody humors. I fear him strangely. His advanced valour is like a spirit raised without a circle, endangering him that ignorantly raised him, and for whose fury he hath learnt no limit.
Enter Maffe hastily.
I cannot help it. What should I do more? As I was gathering a fit guard to make my passage to the doors, and the doors sure, the man of blood is entered.
Age of death! If I had told the secret and he knew it, thus had I been endangered.
Enter D'Ambois. We can infer Maffe has exited.
My sweetheart! How now? What leap'st thou at?
Oh, royal object!
Thou dream'st awake, object in the empty air.
Worthy the brows of Titan, worth his chair.
Pray thee, what meanest thou?
See you not a crown impale the forehead of the great King Monsieur?
Oh, fie upon thee!
Prince, that is the subject of all these your retired and sole discourses.
Wilt thou not leave that wrongful supposition?
Why wrongful to suppose the doubtless right to the succession worth the thinking on?
Well, leave these jests. how I am overjoyed with thy wished presence, how fit thou comest. For of mine honour I am sending for thee.
To what end?
Only for thy company, which I have still in thought, but that's no payment on thy part made with personal appearance. Thy absence so long suffered oftentimes put me in some little doubt that thou dost not love me. Wilt thou do one thing, therefore, now sincerely?
Aye, anything. But killing of the king.
Still in that discord and ill-taken note? How most unseasonable thou play'st the cuckoo in this thy fall of friendship.
Then do not doubt that there isn't any act within my nerves but killing of the king that is not yours.
I will not then, to prove which, by my love shown to thy virtues, and by all fruits else, already sprung from that still flourishing tree, with whatsoe'er may hereafter spring, I charge thee utter, even with all thy freedom, both of thy noble nature and thy friendship, the full and plain state of me in thy thoughts.
What utter plainly what I think of you?
Plain as truth.
Why, this swims quite against the stream of greatness. Great men would rather hear their flatteries, and if they be not made fools, are not wise.
I am no such great fool, and therefore charge thee, even from the root of thy free heart, display me.
Since you affect it in such serious terms, if yourself first will tell me what you think, as freely and as openly and as heartily of me, I'll be as open in my thoughts of you.
A bargain in mine honour. Make this, that prove we in our full dissection, ne'er so foul, if still the sound of friends.
What else, sir? Come, pay me home, I'll bide it bravely.
I will, I swear. I think thee, then, a man that dares as much as a wild horse or tiger, as headstrong and as bloody, to feed the ravenous wolf thy most cannibal valour, rather than not employ it. Thou wouldst turn huckster to any whore, slave to a Jew, or English usurer to force possessions, cut men's throats, of mortgaged estates, or thou wouldst tire thee like a tinker's strumpet, and murder market folks, quarrel with sheep, and run as mad as Ajax, serve a butcher, do anything but killing of the king. That, in thy valour, thou art like other naturals, that have strange gifts in nature, but no soul, diffused right through, to make them of a piece. Stop at humours that are more absurd, childish, villainous than the hackster, whore, slave, cutthroat, tinker's bitch, compared before, and in those humours would envy, betray, slander, blaspheme, change each hour religion, do anything but killing of the king. But in thy valour, which is still the dunghill to which hath reference or filth in thy house, thou art more ridiculous and vainglorious than any mountebank, and impudent than any painted board, which, not to soothe and glorify thee like a Jupiter Hammond, thou eatest thy heart in vinegar, and thy gall turns all thy blood to poison, which is cause of that toad pool that stands in thy complexion, and makes thee, with a cold and earthy moisture, which is the dam of putrefaction, as plague to thy damned pride, rot as thou livest, to study calumnies and treacheries, to thy friends' slaughters like a screech owl sing, and to all mischiefs, but to kill the king.
So, have you said?
Now thinkest thou, do I flatter? Speak I not like a trusty friend to thee?
That ever any man was blessed withal. So here's for me. I think you are, at worst, no devil, since you are like to be no king, of which with any friend of yours I'll lay this poor Stilado here against all the stars, aye, and against all your treacheries, which are more that you did never good, but to do ill, but ill of all sorts, free and for itself, that, like a murthering peace, making lanes in armies, the first man of rank, the whole rank falling, if you have wronged one man, you are so far from making him amends that all his race, friends and associates, fall into your chase. You are, for perjuries, the very prince of all intelligences, and your voice is like an eastern wind that, where it flies, knits nets of caterpillars, with which you catch the prime of all the fruits the kingdom yields. That your political head is the cursed font of all the violence, rapine, cruelty, tyranny, and atheism flowing through the realm, that ye have a tongue so scandalous 'twill cut the purest crystal, and a breath that will kill to that wall a spider. You will jest with God, and your soul to the devil tender, for lust kiss horror, and with death engender, that your foul body is a leman fen of all the maladies breeding in all men, that you are utterly without a soul, and for your life the thread of that was spun when Clotho slept, and let her breathing rock fall to the dirt, and Lachesis still draws it, dipping her twisted fingers in a bowl defiled and crowned with virtue's forced soul, and lastly, which I must for gratitude ever remember, that of all my height and dearest life you are the only spring, only in royal hope to kill the king.
Why, now I see thou lovest me. Come to the banquet.
And they exit. And it's just... Hi, should we tell the truth about each other? And it's interesting when you compare this with the beginning of the act, when you have this the scene with the king and the kind of verbal fencing that D'Ambois does there, and then you get, it's like Monsieur was listening and just taking notes, and I will use your rhetorical devices back at you. And then Bussy just goes, hold my beer, and comes back for him. And of course, this is the thing that isn't really explicitly stated earlier in the play. Is the reason Sarah's asking at the beginning of the play? Why is Monsieur wanting this guy? Why do you want this virtuous person? Who's blood and does all these things? He wants him to murder his brother. That's the plot. And D'Ambois, I don't know if he's been told this explicitly, but he knows by this point that's what he wants. They have this exchange, which I'm not sure how this scene has ended, because it's like Monsieur says, "Oh, we've just insulted each other for half an hour. You love me. Let's go to a banquet." Sorry, what? It's a really interesting scene, and again, it's just we've got actors on stage duking it out here. This is giving actors people to do. So yeah, thoughts. Yes, Aliki.
So do we think the king's going to die soon by any chance?
Well, my knowledge of history is not from this plot. Lynn.
That was what I was gonna. Yeah, this is so weird. Because in drama, people don't tell each other the truth. That kind of makes for drama. And it's also sort of a very unusual take on this sort of macho posturing that I think Brian was alluding to actually be honest with each other. It's sort of verbal violence instead of physical violence. It's just, I really have never seen a scene that's anything like a parallel to this. And I think it's really interesting that Monsieur understands Bussy's weaknesses well enough to basically say, "I double dog dare you to kill the king. You're brave enough to do anything, almost." Twitting him with the fact that he won't commit regicide, as if that makes him weak. That's the way to do it. If anything is gonna do it, is just basically tell Bussy, "Oh, you just don't. It just because you don't dare. You'll do anything except that." And Bussy doesn't take the bait. Really, he says, you're basically the worst person in the kingdom, and the only reason, and I know now the only reason you advanced me is you wanted to hire me as an assassin. And I really don't know what to make of this scene. It's so unexpected.
Yeah, and I'd really like that point. You hired me as an assassin, and it's the I had one job, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Didn't know what the job was,
Yeah, you should have put it on the application form. I'll go to Aliki, then Brian, then Alan.
Just what a pair of enjoyable speeches, and how delightful each of them would be just as a brief little performance or the scene together, plucked out from anything else.
Brian.
I'm really echoing Aliki. This reminds me of a couple of things that have happened before. Earlier, I accused him of Chapman of not writing good dialogue, but writing excellent speeches. And in this case, he's found I guess the flighting ritual is just perfect for him, where the insults, the rhetorical set pieces are beautifully dramatic and just wonderful. It reminds me of the Nuncius speech, which took a similar rhetorical kind of performance and raised it to a level I had not seen and enjoyed before. So masterful, I would think.
Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I didn't find that easy as a cold read.
No,
because
it's not easy stuff. It is genuinely tongue trippy.
It's convoluted as hell in terms of the both speech rhythms and also the sense of the thing. But one thing I did notice, and I'd noticed, I think in the very first session sequence between Monsieur and D'Ambois, Monsieur addressing him as sweetheart. Now, I suspect that there is not a homoerotic subtext to that, but I think a modern director might find that hard to resist.
Actually, we've also got. I think we should also just go, because we read quite a long time there. We shouldn't forget some of the earlier stuff, but the exchange as well with Monsieur and Perrault as well, which was because she wasn't quite having it as well. Yes, she's a servant and she's going to do, but also there's a certain. Yes, I'm not. No, that's
get your bloody hands off, mate.
Yeah, go away. Then we get. I wasn't convinced with the Monsieur Maffe sequence, and some of the stuff in there. It was sort of like I felt the scene slightly lost its way. It started strong, it ended strong. There was some stuff in the middle, and that was a bit odd. Alan.
I'm just wondering whether Maffe was actually written as a comedy character and it was working to the strengths of a particular actor.
Well, he had a bit of business at the very beginning of the play, and he hasn't really featured since. And it's not exactly a spoiler to say he's not called tomorrow. I mean, he's not. He might be about, but he's not really a part in a meaningful way, apart from to demonstrate something in that first scene about Bussy and etc. Sarah.
Yeah, as we were going back and talking about the earlier bit of that scene, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed all the whispering. Like, the fact that you've got Monsieur having his little conversation and it's like, oh yeah, it's Montsurry's wife that he's sleeping with. And then you've got Montsurry having his little whispered conversation with one of the other ladies, and he's like, oh, so like, is he sleeping with the Duchess? And she's like, no, actually they think it's probably either his wife or maybe your wife. And he's like, oh, that's so ridiculous. I really enjoyed all of that. And it was kind of, because there weren't really any asides marked we did have a stage direction, which was whispering, but there weren't any really asides marked in the text. So it took me a minute to work out what was going on. But then once I did, I just thought that was a really great dynamic little scene, and I could just see it all being played out on stage. So the scheming, the atmosphere of scheming in the court is just gradually ramping up with every scene.
And also, I'd just like to point out when Perrault's talking about, I was spying on them with the hole in the wall I made earlier, and the hole through the arras as well. So this is not, I just happened to be looking through a keyhole. We have carefully placed spy cameras. That requires getting someone in. spending half an hour setting up your spy holes. This court is not a safe place to be. And actually, let's also just be clear, in this kind of society, it is really, really hard to have assignations like this and not be caught. Everybody's always, there are always people about, there are always servants about. Getting, this is why when we're talking about, sometimes if you want a private meeting, you need to go into the woods or into open country, because you're less likely to be seen in that context, because it'll be dark or away from where people are. Houses are not places of privacy, especially not a court setting like this. Lynn.
Yeah, especially somebody of the upper orders, royalty and nobility. The women particularly were almost never alone. You didn't sleep alone. You slept with your chambermaid. So it's actually, historically speaking, it's actually very hard for an aristocratic lady to operate secretly, because there's always people around and she has attendants. What was it? We were just a few weeks ago, we read a play where there's a whole scene where a noble lady basically swears 3 different servants to secrecy because she's about to have a tryst with her lover. That's her solution to it, is that these people are going to have to know about it, so I'm going to have them swear to secrecy. So it's really hard to get away with anything.
Okay, well, we're going to go into another act before we end the session. Act 4, Scene 1, another fairly chunky one, but we'll see whether it's broken up into units of action like the last fairly chunky scene was as well. So Act 4, Scene 1, basically everybody's coming on stage once again in the way that they do it in these plays. Henry, Monsieur with a letter, Guise, Montsurry, Bussy, Duchess, Tamyra, Beaupré, Perrault, Charlotte, Annabel, Pirro, and 4 pages, apparently.
Ladies, ye have not done our banquet right, nor looked upon it with those cheerful rays that lately turned your breaths to floods of gold. Your looks, methinks, are not drawn out with thoughts so clear and free as heretofore, but foul as if the thick complexions of men governed within them.
'Tis not like, my lord, that men in women rule, but contrary. For as the moon of all things God created, not only is the most appropriate image or glass to show them how they wax and wane, but in her height and motion likewise bears imperial influences that command in all their powers and make them wax and wane. So women, that of all things made of nothing, are the most perfect idols of the moon, or still unweaned sweet moon calves with white faces, not only are patterns of change to men, but as the tender moonshine of their beauties clears or is cloudy, make man glad or sad. So then they rule in men, not men in them.
But here the moons are changed, as the king notes, and either men rule in them, or some power beyond their voluntary faculty, for nothing can recover their lost faces.
None can be always one. Our griefs and joys hold several sceptres in us, and have times for their divided empires, which grief, now in them, doth prove as proper to his diadem.
And grief's a natural sickness of the blood that time to part asks, as his coming had. Only slight fools grieved suddenly are glad. A man may say to dead man, be revived, as well as to one sorrowful, be not grieved. And therefore, princely mistress, in all wars against these base foes that insult on weakness and still fight housed behind the shield of nature, or of privilege, law, treachery, or beastly need, your servant cannot help. Authority here goes with corruption, something like some states that back worst men. Valour to them must creep, that to themselves left would fear him asleep.
You all take that for granted, that doth rest yet to be proved. We all are as we were, as merry and as free in thought as ever.
And why then can you not disclose your thoughts?
Methinks the man hath answered for us well.
Why, madam, do you not know his name?
Man is a name of honour for a king. Additions take away from each chief thing. The school of modesty not to learn learns dames. They sit in high forms there that know men's names.
Hark, sweetheart, is a bar set to your valour? Cannot enter here, no, not to notice of what your name is. Your great eagle's beak, should you fly at her, had as good encounter as an Albion cliff, as a more craggy liver.
I'll not attempt her, sir. Her sight and name, by which I only know her, doth deter me.
So do they all men else.
You would say so, if you knew all.
Knew all? My lord, what mean you?
All that I know, madam.
That you know, speak it.
No, 'tis enough I feel it.
But methinks her courtship is more pure than heretofore. True courtiers should be modest, and not nice. Bold, but not impudent. Pleasure love, not vice.
Sweetheart, come hither. What if one should make horns of Montsurry? Would it not strike him jealous through all the proofs of his chaste lady's virtues?
If he be wise, not.
What, not if I should name the gardener that I would have him think hath grafted him?
So the large licence that your greatness uses to jest at all men may be taught indeed to make a difference of the grounds you play on, both in the men you scandal and the matter.
As how? As how?
Perhaps led with a train where you may have your nose made less and slit, your eyes thrust out.
Oh, peace, peace, I pray thee, peace. Who dares do that? The brother of his king?
Were your king brother in you, all your powers, stretched in the arms of great men in their boards, set close down by you, all your stormy laws, spouted with lawyers' mouths and gushing blood, like to so many torrents, all your glories making you terrible like enchanted flames, fed with bare coxcombs and with crooked hams, all your prerogatives, your shames and tortures, all daring heaven and opening hell about you, were I the man ye wronged and so provoked, though ne'er so much beneath you, like a box-tree, I would out of the roughness of my root ram hardness in my lowness, and like death, mounted on earthquakes, I would trot through all honours and horrors, through foul and fair, and from your whole strength toss you into the air.
Yo, thou art a devil. Such another spirit could not be stilled from all the Armenian dragons. Oh, my love's glory, heir to all I have. That's all I can say, and that all I swear. Thou outlive me, as I know thou must, or else hath nature no proportioned end to her great labours. She hath breathed a mind into thy entrails of desert to swell into another great Augustus Caesar, organs and faculties fitted to her greatness, and should that perish like a common spirit, nature's a courtier, and regards no merit.
Here's naught but whispering with us, like a calm before a tempest, when the silent air lays her soft ear close to the earth, to hearken, for that she fears steals on to ravish her. Some fate doth join our ears to hear it coming. Come, my brave eagle, let's to covert fly. I see almighty ether in the smoke of all his clouds descending, and the sky hid in the dim ostents of tragedy.
Exit Henry with D'Ambois and ladies.
Now, stir the humour and begin the brawl.
The king and D'Ambois now are grown all one.
Nay, they are two, my lord.
How's that?
No more.
I must have more, my lord.
What, more than two?
How monstrous is this?
Why,
You make me horns.
not I. To work without my power. Married men's ensigns are not made with fingers. Of divine fabric they are, not men's hands. Your wife, you know, is a mere Cynthia. She must fashion horns out of her nature.
But doth she? Dare you charge her? Speak, false prince.
I must not speak, my lord, but if you'll use the learning of a noble man and read, Here's something to those points. Soft. You must pawn your honour, having read it, to return it.
Enter Tamyra and Perrault.
Not I. I pawn mine honour for a paper.
You must not buy it under.
Exeunt Guise and Monsieur.
Keep it then, and keep fire in your bosom.
What says he?
You must make good the rest.
How fares my lord? Takes my love anything to heart, he says.
Come, you're a...
What, my lord?
Oh, the plague of Herod feast in his rotten entrails.
Will you wreak your anger's just cause given by him on me?
By him?
By him, my lord. I have admired you could all this time be at concord with him, that still hath played such discords on your honour.
Perhaps 'tis with some proud string of my wives.
How's that, my lord?
Your tongue will still admire till my head be the miracle of the world.
Oh, woe is me!
She seems to swoon. What does your lordship mean? Madam, be comforted. My lord but tries you. Madam, help good my lord. Are you not moved? Do your set looks print in your words your thoughts? Sweet lord, clear up those eyes, unbend that masking forehead. Whence is it? You rush upon her with these Irish wars, more full of sound than hurt. But it is enough. You have shot home. Your words are in her heart. She has not lived to bear a trial now.
Look up, my love, and by this kiss receive my soul amongst thy spirits, for supply to thine chased with my fury.
Oh, my lord, I have too long lived to hear this from you.
'Twas from my troubled blood, and not from me. I know not how I fare. A sudden night flows through my entrails, and a headlong chaos murmurs within me, which I must now digest, and not drown her in my confusions. That was my life's joy, being best informed. Sweet, you must needs forgive me, that my love, like to a fire disdaining his suppression, raged, being discouraged, my whole heart is wounded, when any least thought in you is but touched, and shall be, till I know your former merits, your name and memory all together crave in just oblivion their eternal grave. And then you must hear from me. There's no mean in any passion I shall feel for you. Love is a razor, cleansing, being well used, but fetcheth blood still, being the least abused. To tell you briefly all, the man that left me, when you appeared, did turn me worse than woman, and stab me to the heart, thus, with his fingers.
Oh, happy woman, comes my stain from him? It is my beauty, and that innocence proves that slew Chimera, rescued Peleus from all the savage beasts in Pelion, and raised the chaste Athenian prince from hell, all suffering with me. They for women's lusts, I for a man's, that the Augean stable of his foul sin would empty in my lap. How his guilt shunned me, sacred innocence, that where thou fearst are dreadful, and his face turned in flight from thee that had thee in chase. Come, bring me to him. I will tell the serpent even to his venomed teeth, from whose cursed seed a pitched field starts up betwixt my lord and me, that his throat lies, and he shall curse his fingers for being so governed by his filthy soul.
I know not if himself will vaunt to have been the princely author of the slavish sin, or any other. He would have resolved me, had you not come, not by his word, but writing, would I have sworn to give it him again, and pawned my honour to him for a paper.
See how he flies me still. 'Tis a foul heart that fears his own hand. Good my lord, make haste to see the dangerous paper. Papers hold oft times the forms and copies of our souls, and though the world despise them, are the prizes of all our honours. Make your honour then a hostage for it, and with it confer my nearest woman here in all she knows, who, if the sun or Cerberus could have seen any stain in me, might as well as they. And Perrault, Here I charge thee by my love, and all proofs of it, which I might call bounties, by all that thou hast seen, seem good in me, and all the ill which thou shouldst spit from thee by pity of the wound this touch hath given me, not as thy mistress now, but a poor woman to death given over. Rid me of my pains. Power on thy powder, clear thy breast of me, my lord is only here. Speak thy worst, thy best will do me mischief. If thou sparest me, never shine good thought on thy memory. Resolve, my lord, and leave me desperate.
My lord hath played a prodigal's part, to break his stock for nothing, and an insolent, to cut a Gordian when he could not loose it. What violence is this, to put true fire to a false train, to blow up long-crowned peace with sudden outrage, and believe a man sworn to the shame of women 'gainst a woman born to their honours? But I will to him.
No, I will write, for I shall never more meet with the fugitive, where I will defy him, were he 10 times the brother of my king. To him, my lord, and I'll to cursing him.
And exit. So we've got a lot of stuff going on there. A lot of court things and stuff. It's like the act sort of begins with a recap of, here's Henry and his best mate Bussy, and Bussy sort of does this thing of, Monsieur going, how's it going for you? And he's sort of going, how's it going for you? Still want to kill your brother? And sort of, again, it doesn't really advance the plot per se, but it sort of just gets us back in the zone, assuming that there's a mini interval, and sort of just getting everything moving again. And then we get on with some plot. I just keep noticing these little anti-Jewish sentiments that keep sort of cropping into the text. It does keep turning up. That's going to be. Some of them are very straightforward, but yeah, there's a lot of them. You're worrying us, Chapman. I don't want to see him in a chat room. Thoughts on this, because we have this movement here against Tamyra and things. People are plotting little factional nudges here and there. Thoughts? Someone have some thoughts? Someone who's not me, as I'm trying to check the text and do other things. Lynn and then Alίκη.
I'm having a hard time figuring Pero out, because she ratted her mistress out just 2 scenes ago, and now she's like, oh, you're a prodigal to accuse her of that. So what if she was motivated to protect Tamyra? Why did she tell the truth before, and why is she lying? I'm having a hard time figuring out how she's wired.
Alίκη.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some kind of bribe in there that we haven't seen or that hasn't been marked clearly enough. Alan suggested in the chat that there were a lot of asides in that speech, but I can't tell. I can't tell if she's actually saying in front of, because the content of what would be the asides, the addresses to Pero, doesn't make sense to me as asides. It only makes sense as public declaration. Oh, say your worst. Only that way will my innocence be proved.
That's how I'm reading it. There's only one unmarked aside that I can see in here, and that's Montsurry earlier in the scene.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there aren't any, but I didn't notice.
But she does refer to bounties, so maybe there's been some kind of bribery exchange there that we didn't catch.
Yeah, I was slightly struggling to figure out what my motivation was, as it were. But yeah, because she does the whole thing. He's just testing you. It's just a love to don't. Alan.
I'm just wondering whether Pero in particular, but also I think to a certain extent with Maffe, you've got servants there who are trying to act in their own interests. but they're doing it very much in the moment without thinking anything about long-term consequences.
It's also the status of some of these servants as well, in the nature of that they're not that low. That they're not they're not maids. These are laid. They are slightly further up the social order. They're not that low rank. Other servants are lower than them. So they have a little more agency around the court, potentially here. They have more intimacy with their betters, as it were. So it's the way they're navigating the complicated world of the court, where everybody else has considerably more agency than them, is interesting. And so same with Maffe as well, actually, as a servant who is potentially actually lower status than pretty much everyone else, as possibly pretty much the lowest named character that we've got here. I wonder. I don't know how Maffe really fits in anything here. So it's an interesting question about status and who has more rank when you don't really have any rank. Lynn?
I would guess that perhaps the waiting gentlewomen are a tier or two lower than Maffe. Maffe is the estate manager, the steward, so basically the highest ranking serving person of the king's brother and the heir presumptive. So he's probably the younger son of a count. So he's actually, birth-wise, he probably has some pretty high affiliations.
It's again, it's slightly difficult to unpack this scene because again, it's presumably leaning into the action of the next scene, and where this is all going to go in terms of action here. It does seem to be an act where an awful lot of men are wanging on about how women are changeable and not really reliable, and then immediately it's followed by this scene, and so I'm very interested in the effect that has, and what that's doing. Because again, I don't think that's an accident. I don't think Chapman is just being randomly misogynistic. I think it's, I'm not saying he wasn't a misogynist, because he probably was. But it is doing something dramatically here about the court and the men of this court and the women of this court. Because this is literally during a scene when they're surrounded by women. It's quite a power move that they're doing that. I mean, it is the king, etc., and Bussy, etc. So it's. I'm wondering also on a character level, at that moment to do that, is that just to say, just in case anyone says that I've been sleeping with this person's wife, shall we just undermine the testimony of this person? Sort of logic. Is that what's going on there? I do not know. I am just throwing ideas about because no one's waving at me. Just watch me flounder. Lynn?
Yep.
And if I follow correctly, the accuser in this case is Monsieur, is that right? Who's been pursuing Tamyra unsuccessfully. So Tamyra's story holds water because it's like he's just jealous. He's just doing this to punish me because I haven't responded to his advances. So that's certainly a plausible explanation. So that the poor cuckolded husband really doesn't know what to believe, which is kind of an interesting effect. Again, this scene is unusual. I mean, usually in early modern drama, when someone is confronted with something horrible they've done, i.e., Arden of Faversham, they just basically confess. People don't hold out in their lies very long, typically in early modern drama, and Tamyra is. She's like, no, I haven't done anything wrong. We'll confront him. I'll write to him. He's my enemy. So that is very bold of her. And then her husband really doesn't know what to think, which would be a great scene to play. It actually is. There's quite an acting opportunity there for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are all acting opportunities, aren't they? And as I don't think there are any parts here that so far really I'm going, okay, some of the ladies in waiting, some of the peripheral members of the court haven't done a lot, but the core company are getting stuff to do, and they're getting interesting ideas. It's an interesting question as to, technically this is a history play, kind of. In theory, a lot of what this court is real. Most of these people are real people. Bussy is a real person. There isn't a lot, I think, to actually base his character on, and he's in real life wasn't anything like this, or he sort of was, but wasn't. Anyway, it's one of these questions of how far is truth true, and I don't think this player is that interested in truth. It's based on a true people who were there is perhaps as far as we can go. Okay, we're 2/3 of the way through the play. Final thoughts. Yeah, it's tricky because there's a lot of stuff I'm really responding well to. I'm really liking this, drawing the threads together, making this feel more like a, where do you put the interval? Do you put it on the mic drop moment? Because I really liked that moment. I thought that was a great place to put an interval. But I'm not sure what it means at that moment, because it's like they have a weird. And actually, Alan was saying earlier, when he's calling him sweetheart, that there isn't a homoerotic quality to it. I don't know. I think there's a weird love-hate dimension between those two that actually could be an interesting angle. I wouldn't necessarily say it was consummated, but there might be something there that you could do something with. It's really interesting, especially when you think about boys' companies and some of the implications about the way that they are perceived as well. So that might not be wholly just a generic term of affection. So I say I'm not quite sure yet. But I'm very interested in what this player is doing, and I know what happens in the last third. So I'm really interested in what's going to happen next. So final thoughts, Lynn. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I am wondering now about sort of tone and genre and approach, because my response to this play is very different today than it was yesterday. It really seemed kind of stodgy yesterday, and today it feels more like, I don't know. I like as Rob said, I don't know if I would go so far as to say parody of a certain kind of tragedy, but it's sort of an exaggerated version of that. Maybe not so going so far as to mock it, but this is all sort of larger than life stuff, and I think maybe the way to do this for a contemporary audience, for a 21st century audience, is to sort of lean into the kind of extraness and over the topness of it. Everyone's so noble, or they're so base and declamatory, that or making a kind of gentle fun of a certain style of performance and a certain kind of literature, and a certain way of set of values and way of being in the world. So I think if you could do that successfully, sort of hit that not quite serious tone, this might be really quite enjoyable on stage.
I think this is something where the deciding on an acting style is important. And I think that's the thing, is it's got to have dynamism to it, especially because often we do have these reasonably chunky bits. I'm also really interested about cutting it as well. I'm increasingly going, I think I prefer the A text, because I'm sort of looking at. I was just having a look at the bit I was saying I wasn't that keen on that bit, and it was an addition from later on. So I'm sort of looking at some of those additions from later on, going, does it make the play better or does it make it longer? I think I'm going with it makes it longer. So I'm really curious for the second look, maybe trimming it back and going to running a second look as an A text, because that will probably knock a few thousand words off the running time anyway, which will be helpful. So that's that really interests me. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the problem with a modern performance is that the text is extremely dense. As I commented earlier, certainly on a first read, it's damn difficult to work out what the sense of the thing is and to get the rhythm. Both, I'm sure, are issues that could be solved with rehearsal and practice and so on. But it's also riddled with classical references which probably were reasonably well known at the time, but these days are restricted to those of us nerds who've been exposed to an awful lot of the stuff. The other one is it does seem to fit into a putative season, well, probably multi-year season of toffs behaving badly plays.
That's big category.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just also saying, are there more classical references in the A text or the B text? I think possibly more classical references get added. I don't think there are that many that are necessary. I think a lot of them can be removed, actually. And I think I would actively make that part of the editing process of going, yeah, we don't really need that. I don't think we can do much with that about the hawking, because that's sort of a theme. But I think people can understand that, even if they don't know the intricacies of bird-based display. But yeah, I think getting the cast comfortable with the text, because I think it will it actually rewards that complexity. I think actually that will be a bonus, not actually it's not a wall of words in the way that masses of Johnson hits you. There's a certain lightness to it, actually, for all its complexity and confusion. At times, on a first read anyway. So I think it might bounce better once we've got into it. Sarah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of final thoughts. None of them really string together. Like you, I'm very intrigued by this. I didn't really enjoy it terribly yesterday. I enjoyed it more today. I can't quite work out what he's doing with it. He seems to be doing lots of different things with it at different times, and I think that's deliberate. But there's just some really nice bits, and I absolutely think that sweetheart thing. When Alan said that it's not homoerotic, I was like, oh, I think it could be. What came to my mind to sort of, because I'm desperately trying to grasp onto modern parallels to try and make sense of it, was a sort of House of Cards type scenario where you've got this. I mean, I'm not saying that D'Ambois is a sort of Francis Urquhart type schemer. He doesn't appear to be that clever, but I don't know, he might be. If that speech at the very beginning where he was rabbiting on about virtue, if that had actually been about, like, if that had been a sort of opening, like setting out of intent of, like, I am a villain and I'm going to sort of climb my way up to sort of the top of the tree, then all this would suddenly make sense. Everything that's going on would make sense. We didn't have that. We had a speech about virtue, but I'm actually thinking, if you played it, maybe I need to go back and look at that speech, because maybe I was taking it at face value and it wasn't actually.
No, I think the thing about virtue is it's a theme that is elaborated after that speech. It's at the very end of the speech he mentions virtue. It's about fortune.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going, nobody controls their fate. I have been screwed by the world. I should be doing better.
Yeah.
And that's actually what we need to latch on to.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, exactly. Because if you do that, thank you for that. Because actually from that, taking that, if you take that as like the opening sort of, like him laying out his intention, then actually it all falls into place, and all this scheming and all this whispering and all this geeing up of suspicion between people, and thinking that someone's your friend and someone isn't your friend. Actually, if you see it all in that context, and you see him as a sort of political operator who is greasing his way up the pole, it's suddenly all the disparate things suddenly make sense, and also it makes it just like super intriguing because I'm now thinking, well, is he going to meet his end? Is he going to be the one who ends up with a stabby stab, or is it going to be actually everybody else and he's going to be the last man standing? I mean, it's based on history, so I guess you only have to look in a history book to find out. But I don't know. It is intriguing, and I'm quite enjoying it, really. And I'm quite enjoying the fact that I'm on the back foot with it. It's not an easy one to read, and in all senses of the word, and that's quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely doubling down at the moment on what I said at the end of the last session, which is the court is the key actually to making the production function. If you understand everybody else, then you sort of understand where Bussy fits, in the sense that he doesn't, and understanding and getting that court right, especially now we know what's going on. We didn't find out until Act 3 explicitly. I think it was hinted. I think it was there, but we're not told explicitly, I brought you into the court to kill my brother, until Act 3. Now that's how we close that's where the interval is. Yeah. they have this explicit thing, boom, that's where we'd put the interval. That's a really interesting shape to what's going on there. Back to Lynn.
I just wanted to have a voice of thought on this whole idea of honor. Sarah was saying it's really more about faith than honor, and I keep thinking about an early modern drama reading group I used to belong to, and one of the members for a while was a professor of English literature who teaches in South Korea, and he said teaching English history plays is really tricky in his culture, even though his students are good readers of English and pretty familiar with Western culture, but the idea of honor is really hard, because in a culture that's deeply influenced by Buddhism, honor means putting yourself last. It means everyone else's good is primary. It's about service. It's about making the world a better place. It's almost the exact opposite in Western culture, and particularly in medieval and early modern, where honor and glory overlap a lot. Honor is really more about public reputation. If you can do that by having integrity, great. But the Western idea of honor, particularly back then, didn't necessarily have a lot of overlap with doing the right ethical, moral, or even legal thing.
This is why I've always slightly struggled with Spanish Golden Age plays, because they're often engaging with these concepts of honor that are slightly different as some of the ones we find on the English stage. Because it's just I just going, I don't know why you're doing that. You're doing it for a thing that I don't get, and so these aren't universal concepts. These are constructs, and I think that's an important thing also for the production to know that that's what these plays are doing. Aliki, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also thinking about tone and don't really understand what the game is. But I don't know, that there's something intriguing there. Let's find out what happens next.
Yes. Predictions for who you think's going to survive the play. It's slightly, when it's semi-historical, it's slightly less fun, because you kind of think, well, X, Y, and Z, they don't die here. I know they don't die here, so it's a shame that there aren't that many people I know who have the potential to have a tragic end. Brian, any final thoughts?
Yeah, like Sarah, I just have some disjointed things. Actually, Sarah's were less disjointed than she said, but mine are quite disjointed. One is that I really like this couplet. Love is a razor, cleansing, being well used, but fetcheth blood still, being the least abused. I really admire that as a little piece of writing. I think I want to keep that in mind and quote it. I'm sure I'll have occasion for that. Another is back to the idea of cutting. I mean, it's certainly like all of us, I'm drawn into this and very moved by parts of it. But thinking of the Portland audiences where I live, and we do have an active theater community here, this is not this play would not succeed here, and we don't have people who are trained well enough to pull it off. And I think I'm sure Britain is different, at least, you know, at the RSC in the National Theatre. But I think there's going to be a lot of temptation in staging it to cut a lot. I'm thinking, for example, of the Hawking speech with its 3 examples of the people that he would bring down. You could do it with 1. You could cut it down to 1. On the other hand, when you do that, you're gutting the primary structure of the original speech, which was built on that triplet and repetition. And so I don't know how much of that original impulse you can keep, and how changed the play would be by the time you're done adapting it for a modern audience.
I'm always more optimistic than that about what can be done even with less training or whatever, especially as actually I suspect one of the problems is with you know, even in the UK, is actually some people have got a lot of experience, but they haven't necessarily got experience with this verse. And actually, that's part of the process of what we're doing here, is to build up knowledge and keys to say. And yeah, I'm always amazed also what audiences will accept and take if you just give it to them. I'm not saying it's automatically going to work. It could be a total disaster. But yeah, I'm always curious about what actually might or might not happen if you take the text on relatively face value. But I think there is a question still to be answered as to precisely where the centre of gravity for this play is. Because, yeah, I don't think we're there yet.
I was interested in Lynn's remark in the comments that Bussy was a major player in the French internal religious wars on the Catholic side, because if anything, he has felt to me very Protestant when in his dependence on individual and personal authority, unmediated by the king's authority, not subject to any but his own sense of rightness. Just a thought, again, dissociated. I think overall at the moment, my reaction to the play is it's like one of those marvelous paintings of ancient ruins, in that in some places there are huge walls that are impenetrable, the wall of words, and in other places there are gaps in them where I see through them these marvelous vistas of beautiful old things. And that's my way of echoing what many of you said about inconsistency, not sure where we land, drawn into it in places, feel resistance to it in others. It feels I'm drawn back again to that image of the sparking laurel branch from the fight scene. And this feels to me like a thing that sparks and sputters and occasionally draws me in beautifully. That's where I am.
Yeah, actually, that brings us to a really good point. Is this is a point of important religious change in France and religious conflict in France. Has religion really come up in that sense at all? We haven't really had a Catholic Huguenot binary position being part of the flow. I mean, I'm not really sure. I mean, I know what side some of them, the confession, some people sit on, but it doesn't seem to be the driver in the same way as I'd expect. Aliki.
Yeah, I was thinking that, except for a Byre lady here and there, and the anti-Semitism sprinkled through some sections of the text, there hasn't been a mention of anything religious except ancient Greek, Roman pantheon.
Yeah, and because that point of who is you know, the Catholic contingent and the Huguenot contingent at court, these are pretty big things. Marlowe's has written a play that sort of covers what happens in the real world because of this schism of the political things happening in the court at the time of this play, and there is nary a thread of that anywhere, and that's fascinating. But hey, we'll never know. There's still more time for stuff to happen, and indeed it will. next time. So all that remains at this time is to thank our wonderful readers. You can become one if you so wish. You can always sign up. There are sign-up forms on our website, beyondshakespeare.org. You can always come and join us. It's free, and anyone can be given a part if you are able to join us on the internet. So you can join us too. But for now, for those who are already here, thank you to all our wonderful readers for being wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. You shall neither riddle nor fiddle.